and welcome to Learning for Love, Lessons for Life. My name is Lisa Jaworski, and I'm really excited to have you with me today, as well as our guests who are joining on the show, Heidi Braaksma and Chantelle Diachina. I am so excited to have both of them join to share about our topic today, which is mindset, mindfulness, and meditation. So this is going to be really thrilling, I think. Both of them are exuberant ladies who have so much to share and can really talk on the subject of being in the sandwich generation, caring for others, children, parents, and in our professional roles, and figuring out how we still make time to take care of ourselves so that we don't burn out and so that we have some tips on how to keep us being the best we can be. So to start us off, Heidi Braaksma, I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for joining me and making the time today to be here.
It's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. So just a little bit about Heidi. I was able to come in contact with Heidi and develop a bit of a friendship and a relationship with her and in a professional setting. And she's just been inspirational in the way that she carries herself. And you're such a role model, Heidi. So that's really why I wanted to have you on. And I thought that you would have so much to share from this show is all about personal and lived experiences. So as much as we have, professional roles, when all is said and done, we're people going through this life. And I'm looking, the reason we created this show is because I'm looking for, insight and wisdom and experiences that we've already gone through. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about yourself and, how this relates to you.
Sure. So I am a social worker by training, which requires me to be very present for the people that I work with. And I'm also a mother, and I'm also a daughter, a partner. And, I have a lot of roles that I play in life. And my drive is to be successful in all of those roles, but also to understand that there are a lot of challenges that can come into place, which is why it's really important for me to make sure that I'm practicing self-care. And I often talk to my clients about self-care, and it's not just, bubble baths and chocolate. That self-care really is around developing your self-worth and setting boundaries, being able to say no, being able to ask for what you need. So often when I talk to people about what's causing them stress, it relates back to not getting their needs met or not being understood. So it's really important to practice using your voice and asking for what you need. And that doesn't mean necessarily that people can meet those needs, but at least if you put it on the table, people know what it is and they can make a decision whether or not they can support you. But oftentimes when we get really stressed, either, work responsibilities, families responsibilities, we have a tendency sometimes to want people to read our minds and be able to meet those needs. And that's going to lead us in positions of feeling frustrated and angry and misunderstood. And that's where also the mindfulness practice comes in.
Right.
For me, what that has done is, by practicing meditation, it helps me to live more mindfully so that I can not only practice being non-judgmental and curious and open, but then I can take that by, practicing and moving that muscle and building that strength to actually take that into my daily interactions with people so that I can practice being non-judgmental and being open as to, why am I not getting the support that I feel that I need in this moment, or why do I feel misunderstood? And rather than reacting, I can respond.
Yeah, that's so important. That's so important. I feel so strongly that we need to be more proactive instead of reactive. And I think that was a lesson I think I learned the hard way where, and also I think it's just learning in life that you learn the lessons come to you when you need them to. And I think that we're not taught to take care of ourselves and to do things that keep us healthy in the beginning in order to then be able to best take care of other people. How did you learn that in your own life? Was it through your professional experiences, or, was it a hard lesson like it was for me, or is this something that you did, train for and realized and implemented?
I think it was a hard lesson that led me to seek out opportunities to be trained. I was working in a position that was really difficult for me, and I started realizing that I was placing my self worth in the hands of others. Um, it was less about what I felt I needed for myself and more about wanting to please others. And what ends up happening after years and years of trying to do the right thing and be the person that those around you want you to be, you just wake up one day, at least that's what happened in my case.
Yeah.
I was deeply unhappy and didn't feel that I was really listening to myself, and made a very drastic decision and left a career after 27 years
Wow.
and decided that I would figure it out. And between having supportive, having supportive people around you is very important,
Yeah.
particularly people who listen. Um, Not necessarily have the answers, because I knew if I sat in silence with someone who supported me, I would hear my own voice.
Mm.
And I think that for me is what helped me to realize there's so much more to life. There's so much more to my happiness than pleasing others. And that's still important to me, but it's not at the risk of my own self-worth, my own values, the things that I cherish.
Right.
And in personal relationships, if you think of parents, and there can be expectations there still, but that goes back to setting boundaries, being able to say no, being able to have those open conversation
Yeah.
with which I believe again takes me back to the mindfulness and that approach to life, because I really feel that I enter into relationships much differently than I entered into them 3 or 4 years ago. I try to understand rather than assume,
Mhm.
which alleviates so much suffering, in
Yes.
my opinion.
That's so well said. And I love the fact that you mentioned how you knew that if you had somebody to listen and trust in order to share some of those stresses, that it wasn't so much what the person was saying to you, it was being able to hear yourself and being able to come to terms with what you really needed in that situation to move forward. What a great lesson
Yeah,
that I,
it was.
geez.
Yeah, and it was painful. I don't want to give the impression that there was this drastic change and then things. It was painful. There was a lot of things that I needed to face uh, and then really figure out what it was that I wanted,
Yeah.
and then slowly take the steps towards that, because it's all process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about, it sounds okay. So when that big change happened for you, I know sometimes some things just happen in life anyway, and this is one of them that causes that transition and change that needs to happen. Was mindfulness and practicing mindfulness and meditation, for example, were those practices you were doing before that transition into the new role that you're in, or is that something that's kind of evolved because of that change?
I mean, it certainly wasn't a practice. I would say it was a dabble. I would dabble in it,
Yeah.
and with yoga and with mindfulness. And I often worked with clients where I worked utilizing those, but I didn't really internalize the practice
Right.
until later on, and realizing that there was just so much that I was getting from it. And the more I did it, the more I realized, and not in a striving way, but just these magical moments that you suddenly go, oh, that's a different way to look at this. Or you
Yes.
know suddenly this judgment thought doesn't come first. It's actually a compassionate thought that came first. And then just noticing that and realizing, oh, things are shifting. It was the shifting that I found so incredible. After leaving that position, what I did is I took a different position, which was not nearly as stressful, and it really allowed me the space then to explore these other things.
That's smart. That's smart. So it
Mhm.
was like a stepping stone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Wow.
I feel very privileged, because obviously I come from a place where I was able to leave something, take something a little less stressful on.
Yeah.
So I feel very blessed for that opportunity. And then being able to move on towards the other things that I feel have really helped support me to be able to support others.
That's wonderful. Heidi, thank you so much for sharing what you have. It just brings a lot of insight. I think these lessons and realizing that, people don't necessarily talk about these subjects out in the open, but the fact that, we're all going through our own things and we move through them and learn from them. It's not like, yeah, we grow from our experiences, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that you'll stick around. I'm going to bring Chantelle on for us to talk, and then I want for you to join us back after.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. And Chantelle.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you on. You and I connected in a different type of way, and actually through through our children a few years ago. And even though it wasn't, it wasn't like we knew each other well, for some reason I was drawn just to connect with you, and that somehow you'd have a role in my life. So this is it. And I know that you have the professional experience of, at this point in your life, about talking about how important it is to be mindful, to really think about meaning in our own lives. So I'm hoping that you can kind of share a little bit about you and what led you to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I guess part of it is, where I am now is I have a corporate wellness company. It's called Prana Yoga and Wellness, and we go into corporate spaces and offer yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and stress management workshops based on Eastern philosophy, but in layman's terms to help people manage stress. So everything that we teach are all the things that work for us personally. So it's tested, tried, and true.
Yeah.
And before that, in my other life, I was a school teacher for over a decade. And so I guess it came into my life actually. I stumbled into it, to be honest with you. I was pretty much a gym rat. I used to go to the gym and work out all the time. At the time, I was living in Brampton, and I had seen Madonna touting her muscular arms, and I'm like, I want arms like that. And then she got into this pose called scorpion. I didn't know what it was called at the time. And she was just really touting yoga as the thing. And she gave up lifting weights and everything. I thought, well, if Madonna's saying that, then I'm going to give yoga a try. So of all the places in Brampton, I went into the class at the gym. And it just so happened that my teacher was from India, and her grandfather had taught her. So it was classical hatha yoga.
Right.
And I really didn't know what I was walking into, but I can say from that first class onward that it changed my life. And I started noticing the shift quite quickly. And so in my own personal background, there's experience with trauma, certainly a lot of high stress as well. And what I noticed was that the yoga was working with me off the mat. And unlike any other physical activity, it was changing me. And I was the least, suspecting person for that to happen to. And that just drew me in deeper and deeper. Like, what is this yoga? What is this? And caused me to, to study in India, to study stateside with different yogi masters. And I've been at it now for over 20 years.
Wow.
And it's still giving. It's just been an incredible journey that I know will be a lifelong journey. So I'm just very grateful for it coming into my life.
That's wonderful. And I think you're such a great example of, so you and I talked a little bit beforehand, and you had talked about how you have a set routine in the mornings that helps you start your day in the right direction. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So first thing in the morning, I get up and I meditate for a minimum of 20 minutes a day. And when I do that, I personally enjoy doing it in silence. So focusing on breath and then allowing that to go, tapping into whatever's present in the moment, in the body, in the mind, the emotions, and then also letting that go, and then just being. And whatever happens after that happens. And also too, I will end usually with a chant. I have a plethora of Sanskrit chants, as well as there's a Japanese chant that I often go to. That comes from the Nichiren Buddhist tradition, which is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And so I will chant that every day. And I find that it just sets the tone for the day. I think about the intentions. I think about what's coming ahead in the day, and how do I see myself moving through the day.
Yes.
And just looking for what it is that I hope to feel, not so much accomplish.
Right.
I keep things open-ended, because you just never know what variables are out there. But
yeah.
At the end of the day, when I go to put my head on the pillow, how do I want to feel about my day?
Yes.
And so then also setting the intention of how I want to show up, the character that I choose to be. And so there's a little routine there too, where I ask that my mind be filled with divine thoughts. I ask that my eyes be filled with divine vision, my ears with divine sound, mouth with divine words, heart with divine love, and my hands with divine work and divine action, as well as that my body is a channel of divine light and love, and that my personality is a reflection of light and love, divine light.
Wow. Wow.
That's an everyday, occurrence. And it's like brushing my teeth. I can't imagine not doing it.
Yes, it's a habit, right? You've made it a habit, which makes it much easier in a sense for that to just be built into your day and start your day off with the right intentions. I think that's so important, and this is such a huge lesson for people to learn. We have to make time for setting the intention for the day, don't we?
Absolutely. And I think now we're ready for that. I think we're mature enough to start to think about that, because there's so much talk about mental wellness and mental health and self-care.
Yeah.
And I think if we start using the term mental hygiene,
yes,
we start thinking about, there was a time when we didn't brush our teeth. There was a time when we didn't floss before or wash our bodies. So now it's extending beyond the physical hygiene and starting to look at mental and emotional hygiene, and certainly sitting in silence. And there's so many variations and ways. It's about exploring and finding out what works best for you.
Yeah.
It's the intention that needs to be a part of your everyday morning routine at the minimum. And then if you can squeeze in an evening, nice sandwich in there, an evening routine as well, that's great. But just find one that works for you, set the time, and just add it on to your daily routine. It can be as little as 5 minutes, or as long as 45, or as long as you want it to be.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And I thought that's a question I wanted to ask you. Is I know that, well, I'll use myself as an example. I do a little bit of mindfulness or meditation light, I guess. I'm still at the 10 minutes in the morning, but I also have little Post-it notes that I keep in my drawer and bring out every morning to help myself remember, what do I want to learn today, and how am I going to help? Those kind of help me frame, how I'm going to move forward in the day. But I think it's important to maybe make some points on. A lot of people think, "Ooh, meditation's not for me. I can't sit still. I can't." What would you say to people who think, "I've tried it," or I can't sit there and just breathe"? What would you say?
These people are my favorite to work with. I really enjoy that, because the first thing I do is, well, can you breathe? And obviously the answer is yes. And so usually what I always say is that it's just beginning to just notice your breath. Just pay attention to the inhale and exhale breath. And then from there, I usually teach abdominal breathing. So a 4 to 8 ratio. So an inhale to a count of 4, exhale to a count of 8. And the belly expands on the inhale, it contracts toward the exhale, which is tricky for people in the beginning. So there's a lot of instruction around that. But focusing on the breath is the one thing that you can take anywhere. You don't need any other, like music or other conditions. Your breath is always with you. You can do it standing, you can do it waiting in line. And also, I think people have this expectation of something magical is supposed to happen when you sit and meditate.
Yeah.
And also people get really tied up in, I'm too busy for that. Like I'm sitting doing nothing and I have a list that's as long as the arm that has to be done. And that's your first indication that then you need to.
You need more. Yeah.
Right. And I think what I usually tell people too is that if you're sitting and the entire time your mind is active, but you set the timer for 5 minutes and you refuse to get up, then at the very least you have sat in stillness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give your nervous system a break.
Yes, so absolutely.
Still and you're silent. And so even though the mind is busy, that's okay. Like you still have a gain when you get up after those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's if you choose to say, I can't do this, and it's been 2.5 minutes, and then you get up, and then basically you've rewarded being busy in the chaos. So you favored chaos over peace. And it's easy to do, to favor that, but it's a lot harder to sit for those first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And just trust that because you're so busy all the time that it's just an automatic response that you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard. So that's part of it, but you will gain even if you just sit for 5.
That's awesome, Chantelle. Thank you so much. You shared some great insights, and I so much appreciate that. I'm hoping now that we can bring back Heidi and just have a little bit of a wrap-up discussion while we have just a couple of minutes left. So Heidi and Chantelle, first of all, I feel like this is a conversation that's important to have, and one maybe that's not had very often or in this way, relating mindfulness and meditation and how we need to prioritize it in whatever way works for us the best. And that's very personal probably for each of us. And also remembering that it's important when you're trying to care for other people that we need to care for ourselves first. Heidi, I wonder if you could share, you had mentioned earlier that you had a bit of an activity or something that you do, and I'm wondering if you could share that with us.
Yeah. So obviously mindfulness helps us to be in the present moment, which is the place we need to be, right? Because the past we can't do anything about that, and the future is far, far away from us. And one of the things that I did, and I continue to do, if I'm about to make a presentation at work, or if I know I'm walking into maybe a more difficult conversation, it's just a really small practice, and it's really just to ground you, and it's referred to as awe. So that's the beginning of each question. So the first question is just asking yourself, am I breathing? The second is, where am I breathing? Because that's really important, because if we're shallow breathing, chances are we're not going to do a whole lot to ground ourselves. We really need to try and deepen that breath. So am I breathing? Where am I breathing? What am I feeling? Because that's really important, because if you can name it, you can tame it. So it's really good to kind of identify it and create a little space there. And then the last one is, where am I grounded? So if you're sitting or you're standing, just reminding yourself that you are grounded in the now. So it's a very simple practice, but it's just enough to kind of shift whatever might be happening that's pulling us either into the future or into the past.
Oh, I love it. That's a great idea. Thank you so much. And I know that there's so many different types of forms of meditation, mindfulness that you can do. And Chantelle, you mentioned about how you draw on all of your senses and really bring to your attention, what your smells and what you're going to feel. And I think that's so important for people to remember too, is I've done little, I guess, mindfulness walks with one of my daughters, where we'll go out and I'll say, let's name 5 things that you can hear right now, but it really kind of brings to your attention or allows you to focus on the things around you, which sometimes we just don't. We're so distracted that I don't think we really pay attention to what's going on in the moment. Yeah, so little tips like that maybe it doesn't necessarily, if people are just starting, it doesn't necessarily have to be sitting still if that's not somebody's way of being. Would that be safe to say?
In the beginning, it's just bringing awareness, but I'm a big proponent of at least you can sit in a chair for 5 minutes and just be still and just focus on your breath. Your breath is, this is what keeps you alive. It's something that goes unnoticed and unappreciated. And I think taking literally a breather for yourself. I know there's been times, where I've had to take care of my mom. I'm running a business. I'm looking after my kids.
Yeah.
And I literally had only maybe 5 minutes before the next thing was coming up. And I say to my family, I'm going into the basement. Give me 5 minutes. And I just laid on the sofa and just focused on my breath for 5 minutes. And that's okay, recharge, reboot, up and at it again. But it's these little things that you need to take care of.
Yeah.
And again, even though walking, it's really good, but we live in such a busy society, and we're always bombarded with information and movement and go, that it's literally becoming really difficult for people to sit and be still, which that's what your nervous system needs. So you don't have to close your eyes. You can just sit and look out the window and just daydream if you need to.
Right.
In silence. I think that's an important piece to self-care.
I love that you said that, and I almost feel in a very good way, like you called me out, and I like it. It's like
a lot of people are afraid of being in silence and sitting still. Like that is a common fear that I run into quite often. So
I think it's really important. I don't know, Heidi, if you can relate too, but even, not feeling guilty. And I think in having the people around you to care for and about and that you love so much, feeling okay with the fact that, okay, I'm zipping out of here for 5-10 minutes and that's mine. And it's, I feel okay with that because I need it in order to be the better me I need to be for you. And I think that's just maybe something we learn over time, but I don't know. Heidi, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think we're pulled in, just like Chantelle said, we're pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah.
We don't take that moment out to just breathe, to just connect with ourselves.
Yeah.
We're just going to keep, it's like a hamster wheel, right? And eventually you're going to fly off.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, this is the best opportunity I could have ever created. It's selfish, but it's worth it. It's selfish in a good way, where I get to just reach out and connect with people who I find inspirational and that I admire. So thank you for saying yes, and thank you for being a part of this. And I'm hoping so many people will learn something from this show, and I know that they will.
And thank you. So
thank you.
Important for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today on our show. And I'm hoping that you got something from talking about mindset, mindfulness, and meditation, and realizing that how important it is for us to just take some time. Don't feel guilty. Remember Chantelle's lessons about breathing. Remember Heidi's little activity about awe. Look back at this episode as many times as you need to figure out what those lessons are, so that you can feel comfortable going forward and implementing these ideas regularly. So thank you so much. I'll look forward to the next show. Take care.